Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the 7 seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Welcome to the Political Pirate Podcast, the 3 Ps with the old salty dog here, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted. How are you?
Good morning, John. How you doing, buddy? It was hard to get those 3 Ps out this morning.
Yeah, I was a little bit slow. I didn't have my Starbucks or whatever because I'm boycotting.
They're on strike.
Actually, I'm not. I never go in there. I may now, though.
I did drive by there today, and they weren't out boycotting. Had they been, I would have gone in there and bought 2 of the big red cups for Christmas.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the Starbucks in just a little while and kind of what it says about the country and the different political movements and all that. But before we go any further, I always talk about that I'm usually going fishing on Fridays. So I hadn't posted any pictures in a while, Ted, and I know you love to fish. So I thought I'd make you envious and show these. These are representative of what I caught.
You're killing me, man.
The one at the top is what they call a mutton snapper. The one in the middle is a red grouper that I actually won the jackpot on that. And the one on the bottom is a mangrove snapper. Are you duly impressed, sir?
I am impressed. That mangrove snapper. I don't catch them that big in the Keys. I've caught some big ones, but not that size.
Yeah, well, that's why they call me the old salty dog.
You sure are.
Well, let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. We want to talk about this story that this particular one kind of centers around an event that happened in Mexico City. It comes to you via the AP, but it highlights something that's going on all over the world and taking kind of a different turn here in the United States of America. But the headline on this is thousands protest crime and corruption in Mexico City as Gen Z protesters gain momentum. Let me define what they're saying a Gen Z is in case you're wondering what that means. Gen Zs are defined as members of a demographic group born between the late 1990s and early 2010s and have organized protests against what they call inequality, Democrat backsliding, whatever that means, and corruption. Before we get really into the details of this, what are your general thoughts about this issue? Have you seen some of this in our nation and around the world?
Yeah, it's interesting because you bring this up, and there's a good contrast when you look at what's going on in Mexico and these countries around the world that aren't a constitutional republic and have an open society as free as ours. And so the Generation Z is fighting against the corruption of government and going after that. What I see in this country is our Generation Z grew up in that era of the Obamanization of the country with DEI, wokeism. And so they're fighting against the corporate structure in this country that they just don't like. But you got to understand how many people work for a corporation or a business where it's a capitalistic system in this country. Pretty much everybody outside of government. And, if you don't have a business where you're making profits, you can't afford to hire people. And, these people are fighting for better working conditions or want more money. And I can understand that. I went through that. And that's the beauty of America. You have opportunity, and so you can take yourself out of that. So, we'll see where these go. I just hope they get what they want.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing to me about this is what they're actually protesting. In Mexico City on Saturday, they protest crime. Now, these are young people.
Right.
Young people, basically 20 to 30-ish. Crime, corruption, and impunity in a demonstration organized by members of the Generation Z, as they're calling them. And so they're protesting a lot of the things that in a way is almost like the MAGA movement here about crime in the streets and that type of thing. But young people are actually protesting the lack of opportunity, the crime in the streets, the violence specifically that seems to be targeted at them. I find that pretty interesting.
It's really interesting because here, we're trying to clean up the mess from the last administration where you had this rampant influx of immigrants, illegal immigrants that came into this country. We knew a lot of them were released out of the jails and that. And so our government today, the Trump administration, is trying to rid the nation of the carnage that was sent in by these other countries. And so you've got people in our country protesting about getting people out of here that shouldn't be here. In these other countries, they want to have the rule of law and follow that. And it's interesting because a lot of this started from that mayor in that small city in Mexico that fought against the cartels, and he got murdered, and that inflamed these people. And so they're standing up, say enough's enough. And this is really where you're going to get that kind of change you want in a country, when that population rises up to fight against that. In our country, they're fighting against the wrong thing. They should be standing up with the Trump administration, which is standing for rule of law, getting people out here that shouldn't be, that are driving down our wages. That makes better opportunity for American citizens.
Yeah, you mentioned about getting the lawless out of here and getting people who are illegal here and that kind of thing. Well, I was listening, as I quite often do when I'm coming to the studio. I was listening to Morning Joe this morning, and I do it for you so you don't have to, of course. And I talked to you a little bit on the phone on the way here about it. And what's really interesting to me is how they're basically just bashing the Trump administration because of their trying to remove illegals, and they're trying. I'm sure there are some cases out there that where a person was improperly treated. I mean, that's bound to happen, and all. But they highlight that. But the biggest point that I would like to make on that is they don't highlight the fact that none of this would be necessary. We wouldn't have to deport a single illegal, and they wouldn't have the magnitude if it weren't primarily for what happened in the Biden administration, letting all these millions of people in. We wouldn't be dealing with this.
You're absolutely right. And you would think people in our country would stand by government people that are the agencies like DHS, instead of mocking them, putting them in risk, exposing them, they would stand there. Remember, it used to be the mantra, if you wanted to fight against crime, if you see something, say something. Yep. And so citizens would stand up and they would say, hey, I see this going on, this nefarious activity. And so the government could come in there, or the law enforcement could come in there and do what was proper. Now we're seeing, if you see something like ICE that wants to enforce the law, say something so we can protest. And it's the totally opposite of what you're seeing in Mexico.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me to look at who's actually protesting some of this stuff. Because, you would think, based on what, like I was hearing on those liberal talk shows this morning, that, because they're kind of challenging black people, for instance, and it's about how they were mistreated and all that. I'm not denying any of that. But you don't see a lot of working class black people out there protesting. You don't really see a lot of Hispanic working class citizens protesting. The people you see protesting are either paid people or they're super white liberals, including, old gray-haired liberals like myself with the hair only comparison. And then you see some of these people who are benefiting from it, whether they be gang members or that kind of thing out in LA. But in general, you don't see the average American really protesting that.
No, they're busy working. Isn't that amazing?
Imagine that.
But that mayor, Carlos Manzo, he was the mayor of Uraban, Mexico. He was murdered November 1st because he stood up against the crime and corruption in the cartels, and that guy's a national hero. And so you can see why they're protesting, because the government didn't do enough to go after these cartels, and it's just the opposite of that here in this country. I hope they bring those people to justice.
Yeah, and there's another kind of take on it too here in America, because we do have some issues with Generation Z here. But in America, there seems to be what I would call a general lawlessness with many in Generation Z. And I'm going to there's countless examples, so I'm only going to give you a couple of them. And when I say it, I don't mean that they're necessarily criminal gangs, but they're not really protesting conditions so much as just kind of protesting society in general. But I want to play you this one video because in spite of all the crime statistics dropping and the calmness that has prevailed in D.C., there are some examples primarily of young people doing some pretty crazy stuff. And this happened, I believe, on Halloween, and they're basically bum rushing this park. And I want to play a quick clip of that, and we'll come back and talk about it.
D.C. police say they made multiple arrests so far this Halloween night in the Navy Yard neighborhood. We received this brand new video of what looks like teens fighting with National Guard members. Now, police say the arrests were made in the area of 1st and M Streets in Southeast. Right now, officers are asking people to avoid the area. Thank you for staying up with us. I'm Leslie Foster. As concerns,
most of that was happening in what they call near the Navy Yard. What is it called?
The Navy Yard area.
Navy Yard, where the vice president famously kind of
lives.
lives.
I stay down in that area, and I see the National Guard there every time I go there. I mean, they're walking around, crime is down, you feel safe in the street. But again, this Generation Z of the United States is attacking these people that are trying to enforce the rule of law. And you got to wonder, are the people protesting in Mexico paid by Soros and the nefarious groups that are funding a lot of these? I saw a clip, and I think you might have seen it too, a guy over the weekend. They interviewed him, said, "Why are you protesting?" And he had like a orange wig on and a dress. He's a guy. And he goes, "Be honest with you," he goes, "I'm just here because they paid me $200. I mean, that's how committed he was. And, they want people there in numbers to show how bad it is here in America.
I guess at least he's working, right?
He was working.
I wonder if he's claiming that on his taxes. I doubt it. But just to show you that it's happening really coast to coast, I want to play a what they call a street takeover, and it's from a suburb of L.A. basically. Check this out.
And a car caught fire during a street takeover in Lakewood. It happened late Saturday night. Witnesses say the car was doing donuts when it caught fire. The condition of the driver is still unknown. There were 2 other street takeovers in East LA around the same time, and multiple cars were also seen doing donuts in Compton. Some people in the large crowd used laser pointers as cars spun in circles. Now, it's unclear if LA County Sheriff's deputies made any arrests.
And that scene you just saw is happening in places like Boston, every major city.
Jacksonville, Florida. I get calls from people over there.
And what's interesting to me about it is that the young people that are participating in this, now they have bum rush 7-Elevens. I'm not saying they don't commit some crimes, but the general thing, they don't really seem to be protesting anything in particular. They just seem to be disruptive, which to a certain extent is normal within young people. I do think that social media, the way it's used, compounds this problem and all of that. But there seems to be a restlessness about it, and it could be the fact that they're not being educated. And I'm not just talking about taught how to act. I mean, that's certainly a way. But the fact that they feel hopeless because they don't have any ability to get a good paying job, because they literally can't read and write. We're doing them a disservice. I'm not blaming the kids themselves for that. It's an adult not holding the feet to the fire. But I get a kick out of how, as I said earlier, I was listening to these programs, how they worry about every kid that is illegal here and all that, but they don't worry about the kids here not getting educated. Don't even get me started on like abortion and all that type of stuff. The liberals worry about all the wrong stuff. They should be holding people's feet to the fire about the kids' education and all that, because if they had a brighter outlook on the future, maybe they wouldn't just be living in the moment all the time.
Well, you bring up an important point. You say they don't care about the kids. They're standing up for these other things, but yet they do this manipulatively to take advantage of these people, to use them as a tool to try to drive a wedge between the conservative side against the liberal side, or the old establishment of what America has always stood for, and they want to tear that down. So they're using these people as pawns in the name of equity, equality, and all these things that they use, and it's a losing argument for people that have rational thought.
Well, back to this worldwide aspect of it. Just to give you an example, the largest, quote, Gen Z protest took place in Nepal on September.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, following a ban on social media, and led to the resignation of that nation's prime minister. And you think about it, Ted, to have a riot, if you want to call it, I'm not saying it's that necessary, but a protest in a place like Nepal, that takes a lot of courage on the young people's part. Things must be pretty bad.
It really does. And that there again, we're going back to social media where you can get this message out. Remember the flash mobs they used to have?
Oh, yeah.
That's how the Arab Spring started in Tunisia, was social media. And they had all this disruption around the world, and everybody thought this was going to be the fall down of the radical Islamic terrorist groups, but really it created a lot of those, and it was through the use of social media. And so the people that are behind these movements are smart. They know how to use social media. They knew the right buttons to push to get a crowd to show up and attack people that are out there trying to do their job. We see it with Custom Border Patrol, ICE agents, and they do this over and over again. Those things need to stop, and that's where the investigations on Capitol Hill go. Not that I'm up for more investigations on the oversight committees, because most of the time it's hindsight. But they'll spend this time, they'll get the information, say, oh, this was going on, but nothing comes of that.
Yeah, in Mexico, where they had this, said many young people say they are frustrated with systematic problems like corruption and impunity for violent crimes. That really sounds a lot like the MAGA movement to me.
It really does, and I would be upset with that too. Maybe they'll elect Donald Trump for their next president.
They probably did. But I love...
Maybe he'll make Mexico the 52nd state after Canada.
I have a quote here from a gentleman named Andreas Massa. He's a 29-year-old business consultant. And he said, we need more security. And he's carrying this flag that represents these movements called the skull flag. But he said they need more security. It's an interesting choice, the skull flag.
It sure is.
Because it's kind of a pirate thing, which we're talking about here a little bit. Right. But young people voted. It's interesting how young people in this country are voting. They voted in huge numbers for Donald Trump. There's no question about that. But they also voted in huge numbers for Madami in New York. They kind of put him over the top in that primary. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're frustrated, I think, is the biggest thing. People are frustrated. They think government's going to bring down the price of rent. They think government's going to control the food costs and all this other stuff, and all this stuff they're going to get free. There's going to be a reality check shortly after he gets sworn in. I mean, he's already out there fomenting protests to increase better working conditions at Starbucks. I've not gone into a Starbucks and said, man, these are terrible working conditions. I can't wait till this guy gets in there and improves these working conditions. So I think there's just that level of frustration. And again, it goes back to social media. Let's inflame this group of people so that we can win the next election to bring about our agenda. And I was doing some research to see if Obama and Eric Holder were involved in some of this, but I can't find a connection as of yet. But these are the things that he was really behind, is the labor unions and making them stronger. And, just as an aside, the agencies in Washington, a lot of the ones I work with when I go up there, one of the biggest impediments of them getting work done is they become unionized. And so what happens, and I know there's some great unions out there and great workers with unions, but when you do it in a bureaucracy like the government, it just gums it up, slows it down, and it becomes that much more inefficient.
Yeah, well, we're getting ready to go to break here in a minute, but I want to just kind of comment on, because I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, get out of my yard, old man kind of thing, because I've always seen, when I first got involved in podcasting, one of my goals was to be a bridge, if you will, between the founding fathers, the type of stuff that we were preached to and learned, the America that we grew up in, Ted, and the kids that are basically just glued to these cell phones looking at that, to try to carry that message over that gap, because if we don't, we're going to lose the country. And so, we need to educate, Ted, like you always say, motivate and activate, because this is one thing I know. If you lose the young, you lose the future of your country. That's just the bottom line.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's that old saying that if you want to see one's past, look at their present situation. Look at the quality of life. Look at, the freedoms and liberties that you have. If you want to see one's future, look at the present situation. Education you bring up. When you have that many people in school districts that can't read or write or do the math, you have college entrance. When people go in there, they can't do basic algebra and the basic maths. That is the future of this nation. And that won't be seen until another 5, 10, 15 years from now. Contrast that to what you're seeing in China and the Asian countries. Their educational scores are going way up, and we're going way down. So, you can kind of read the tea leaves of what's coming. And I don't like it. I know you don't like it. And we have time to change it, but it's going to take the willpower of us, we the people, to say enough's enough. We're getting back to the basics.
Well, as always, Ted, you just triggered a thought in me as well, that one of the kind of things that's really fascinating and a bit scary, if you will, is the most organized youth movement in this country right now and growing, that is actually preaching not only the gospel, but the American system and freedom and free speech and all of that thing, is Turning Point USA.
It sure is.
And they're being persecuted, if you will, by the far left and the media and the leftist media. So the group that we all should say, we may not agree with everything, but boy, those are kids that are going somewhere. We're actually being organized against them. And that is pretty terrifying, because some of these kids, like in Mexico and Nepal that we mentioned, and you could mention dozens of other places, are actually yearning for exactly what Turning Point USA is pushing.
John, you stimulated something in me. I had written this down over the weekend because I'm very passionate about this, because I saw this before I got into Congress. It was kind of just self-evident, but I saw it when I was in Congress. That whole movement to get God out of our country, to get religion out of our country. And a lot of those principles, practically all those principles, went into the founding of this country, into the tenet that says our rights come from a creator. Unlike Tim Kaine out of Virginia that says your rights come from government. I want people to understand this is the divide, this is the dichotomy we're seeing in this country. There's two main political parties. Like them or love them, it doesn't matter. There's two in here, two trains of thought. Which one never mentions God, tries to remove God from schools, prayers from schools, attacks high schools for pre-game prayers, sues cities for the nativity scenes, kneels during the national anthem at sporting events, celebrates thugs like George Floyd, and I know that's going to make some people mad. Yes, he died in a way he shouldn't have, but you need to go back and look at the history and look at how the left idolizes this guy. And you take somebody like a Tim Tebow that gets chastised in the media, in the liberal, and that mindset of those people over on that other side. They tolerate the violent protests. They celebrate Charlie Kirk's murder, the murder of the CEO from United Healthcare, and idolize Luigi Mangione. What party says boys can be girls and girls can be boys? And this is not a kink song from the 70s. They're anti-Israel, and they want to disarm the citizens. That's one party and one mindset, and it's the Democrat Party that's morphed into the liberal progressive Marxists. And you can't deny that, and I'll argue anybody on that. And what party rarely references God or opens up with a pledge of allegiance or a prayer? The socialist communists are the ones that are bashing this. And think of the politicians, and I know me, when I went through my transformation to run for politics, the readings I did on the founding of this nation, the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, the arguments for and against that, I referenced our founding fathers all the time, and I think you hear a lot of people doing that. But look at who's coming into office now. You've got Zohran Madani, who in his victory speech, the first person he recognizes is Eugene Ebbs, who was the founder of the radical progressive movement. And then you have the lady up in Ithaca, New York, who's an avowed communist. I don't think she's going to be quoting George Washington much. And
Probably
the mayor of Seattle, Washington, who is an avowed socialist. So I'm sorry I went off on that, but you sparked something I had to chime in before I forgot it.
No problem. No problem. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of our show, look at the tagline that says Contact Freddie. There it is right now. And make that call because we certainly need your help. Please like what we're doing. Share it far and wide. Take us to break, Ted.
Yeah, and we really want you to sponsor us. And, it's not so much about advertising as it is supporting this program to get your word out, to get this message out to people and say, listen to this program. They have some good arguments, and I think it's worthy of listening. We appreciate your support. Take care.
We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Or that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast.
You got that out well this time.
Yeah, maybe I've had some Starbucks. I don't know. We're going to talk about coffee now and business. And you may go, why are you talking about that? I think you'll get it here in just a moment because, first of all, they're a huge business. And secondly, there's a lot of politics. And it's interesting who is actually protesting Starbucks. This comes to you from Business Insider. The headline, Zohran Madani wants you to boycott Starbucks. He wants you to boycott Starbucks. Imagine, Ted, the progressives now are against Starbucks. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, this is a sign of things to come out of our favorite socialist mayor of New York. He's calling for boycotting. He's not even been sworn in yet. You know, it's interesting. This goes right back to the beliefs of communism. Each gives according to their ability, and each receives according to their needs. Is that not what he's promoting? But he's not a communist. He's a socialist, he says. But his policies are communist. Don't let anybody fool you, and don't think otherwise. Just read what he says. I mean, he wants free health care too. You know, Obama did that too. You know, the whole thing with Obamacare is they wanted universal health care, which is a disaster. If you ask somebody from Europe, Canada, any country that has it, it'll give you the bare basics. It's like a Disney World, the bare necessities.
Well, Mandami wrote this on X, which is kind of interesting that he's even on X, I suppose. But Starbucks workers across the country, these are his words, not mine, are on an unfair labor practicing strike fighting for a fair contract. He added, while workers are on strike, I won't be buying any Starbucks, and I'm asking you to join us. Now, Ted, you know, I'm a bit confused about this because, first of all, isn't the coffee supposed to be free? If you go with what Mandami said, why did he charge him for coffee at all?
This is the lunacy of their arguments. You know, this is going to be interesting to see how they get in there. And I hate to see him destroy New York City, but you know what? It needs to be flushed out. You know, he will win the best realtor for the state of Florida.
Well, you know, I always like to say at times that if you don't get anything outside the show, at least from me, Ted, you get a lot of stuff from. Get this, okay? And I'm not knocking anybody working as a barista. I didn't even know that was a position until the last few years. But if you're serving coffee, if that is your primary job, I hate to break this to you, but that is not a career choice. You're never going to make but so much money because they can only charge so much for a cup of coffee, and Starbucks is charging about as much as anybody could. But hear me out on this. I want to make sure people understand. I'm not knocking people working there, but when you're in the job of waitressing and stuff like that, there's only a handful of people that make really good livings doing that.
Yeah.
And the thing about that, if you're going to make a really good living based on tips and that kind of thing, you have to excel. You have to be way above. You probably, to be a really good, say, waitress and make a lot of money, and I've known few that do, they actually have to be the top of, they have to be like the NBA of waitresses to do it. But it's supposed to be an entry-level job, get you some experience, learning how to work, learning how to show up on time and do what they tell you, and then use that as a reference to build to another job. If you're looking to go and serve just coffee at a Starbucks, you're really limiting yourself. And I don't think all the strikes in the world are never going to change that.
Do they give a degree for that, a barista degree?
They probably do somewhere.
You know, your points are...
They give a lot of worthless ones, that's for sure.
Reminds
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Ted. I'm a jokester.
When I was in Congress and I had to do, I got invited to do the chili, be a judge for a chili cook-off. And the guy I was sitting next to, I think I've told you this before, he was a PhD from the University of Florida. I said, what's your line of education or studies that you teach? He goes, ceramics. And he's got a PhD. And I'm thinking, ceramics, it must be industrial ceramics, high tech, you know, high heat capacity and things like that. And I says, are those kind of things the high tech ones? He goes, no, pottery. And he was complaining because not enough students were trying to get a PhD in pottery. And it's like, would you go to a business school to learn how to be a barista at a Starbucks? I went in there today just to see if they're protesting. And like I said, had they been, I would have bought probably 3 big red cups and given one to Zach also. But they weren't protesting, but I counted 6 people in the one right off Archer Road here. And I'm thinking, how much coffee, donuts, and other things do you have to sell to pay people minimum wage to make a profit? And so, like you said, it is an entry-level job. It's something while you're going to school, you got to make some income, make your parents happy, have a little spending money, but it is not a career choice. But yet there are people maybe retired that do that because they want to be around people and talk, and that's absolutely fine. But to go out and protest because the working conditions is a big part of the protest. They said the working conditions are terrible because they wanted them to wear a more standardized costume or clothes, and Starbucks gave them 2 black T-shirts to go with their green apron, and they're protesting that.
Yeah, well, I always get a kick out of this whole concept of a living wage. To me, that shows you don't understand basic economics, because it's not I hear people say, "Oh, you can't raise a family on minimum wage." No joke. You never have been able to. It's not intended for that. And I'm actually opposed to a federal minimum wage. If states want to do it where they compete, we pay more than Georgia or whatever, that's fine. But a federal minimum wage makes no sense at all, because I'm telling you, I've lived both places. It's a heck of a lot cheaper to live in Hawthorne than it is New York City, and about to get more expensive. So you can make $50 an hour in Hawthorne and live like a millionaire. If you make $50 an hour in New York City, you're still going to be looking for a job. And here's the thing about that people don't understand, including all these people that voted for Mandami. Whatever the minimum wage is, I don't care what it is, it's always going to be the minimum wage. You're never going to excel making minimum wage. You're just not.
No, it's entry level. You know what your minimum is, and I don't know anybody that wants to be at the minimum, especially in America. I look back, and I'm sure you did the same thing. We worked 2 and 3 jobs. When I say we, Carolyn and I, she was a cashier. She worked as a dental hygienist. We just worked our tail off because we were broke and didn't like the feeling of being broke. And we made a vow to never be broke again. And so, again, with America and the educational system we have, if you can't read, write, or do basic math when you come out of college, you're not going to be a CEO of a company. Very few of them are. Some of them will because they have that work ethic and drive, but the majority of them aren't. And so, evaluate yourself before you go into college and debt and things like that, thinking that the government's going to take care of you, or Zoran Mandani is going to come and fight for you, because he's not. They're fighting for power. And, this is going to be a great observation of self-government in New York City when we look back on this.
Yeah, well, Ted, I told all my kids this. I said, if you're like working to go to school and you're trying to get more education, or you're trying to, advance yourself, I'll help you any way I possibly can. But if you're wanting to go out and work for minimum wage, and that's your career choice, I'm not going to help you at all. I'm not opposed to minimum wage. I'm not opposed to people. There's dignity in every work. But I tell them, if you go out and work a year or 2 for minimum wage, you will learn all you need to learn about why you want to elevate yourself. So you don't need any lessons from me, because it always reminds me of something old Big Sid, my dad, said. What drove him to college, he had no intention of going to college. He went to work on the railroad the summer he graduated for 1 year, or one summer, and that drove him to college, because he said he was making $1.75 a day working on the railroad in the heat in Florida. That put his behind in college.
I can relate to that so well, because my parents' house, they got divorced when I was 13. The house got repossessed at 15. There was nobody to fall back on. Carolyn was out of her house at 16, and they went through the same situation. And I was working construction as a apprentice. Actually, I was a laborer, and they put me to work with Vern, who was this real ornery guy, but he was the only one that knew how to do steps and risers and all that. So I was his laborer. And this guy, I'm thinking, this is an old guy. I think he was 45. He's swinging a hammer. He's mad and yelling at you all the time. And I remember, I don't want to be like that. I'm going to get an education.
Drive you right there, man.
That was negative motivation.
But just to show you that Mandami is not the only elected, he's a mayor-elect, I guess. There's another mayor-elect out there, and I got a video of, she is the mayor-elect now of Seattle, which is the corporate home headquarters of Starbucks. I want to play this video. It's a little hard to hear her because the crowd is chanting, but she's literally in front of a Starbucks with protesters that is a multi-billion-dollar company in her town of Seattle. Listen to what she has to say.
Of this company, and they deserve better than empty promises and corporate union busting. That is why I am proud to stand with union baristas in their fight for a fair contract and for a union. That is why I am proud to our picket line and proud to say loud and clear, I am not buying Starbucks and you should not either. And I would like to close with a message to Starbucks. This is your hometown and mine. Seattle's making some changes right now. And I urge you to do the right thing. Because in Seattle, when workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? Because this is your city. Thank you very much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. She's in Seattle, which I want to remind you is the home of Starbucks, where it all started. Check these numbers out, Ted. Starbucks annual revenue for the fiscal year ending September 2024 was approximately $36.18 billion. That's what they're talking about.
That's
and
she's literally
talking about running them out of town there. Florida, are you listening? But, I mean, it's just crazy, Ted.
Do you suppose she got any campaign donations from Starbucks?
Probably.
and Zohran Madani is doing this in New York now. New York is on the East Coast. Seattle's on the West Coast. Thousands of miles in between, about 2,200 miles in between. I think it might be a little more. Don't quote me on that. But they're having organized protests, both at Stardust. Do you think there's any coordination there?
Most likely.
Most likely.
I'm sure we'll have them here because it's not much more liberal than this. But let me just give you a little history of this strike. It says the open-ended strike coincided with what Starbucks labels as Red Cup Day, when the chain offers free, they should be for that, reusable holiday cups to customers. Historically, it has been driven record sales for Starbucks. So they're hitting them at the very time that, it's perfect timing that they could be making the most money. It's just crazy.
I've always thought what I would love to see these corporations do is just sell out, shut down, and just say, you know what, we're not going to play anymore. The thing with communism, John, the socialists, or the communists hide behind the veil of socialism. They hide behind that veil. In America, they subscribe to the teachings of Marx and denounce capitalism. They believe capitalism creates a caste system, the wealthy, the uber poor, where communism makes everybody equal. In communism, you're predestined to live where the government says you'll exist and how much you'll make. I mean, that's what's coming. And so, more power to them. This is a free society where you have free choice. I'm just glad I live in the free state of Florida.
Yeah, well, home ownership is being talked about a lot, and rightfully so. It is truly the American dream. But if the progressives have their way, and you already see this in places all over Europe that aren't, quote, communism. I know you've traveled over there quite a bit. If the progressives in this country, I can tell you right here in Gainesville for sure, if they had their way, you would be born in at least a 3-story building that has 100 people in it. You would never really leave there. You would have to shop in the store right underneath there.
Sure, because you don't have transportation.
Right, and they'd basically flush you out the back when you die. That would be your existence. Everything else you'd have to watch on your video game, because freedom of movement and all that kind of stuff, they're opposed to it.
Yeah, upper mobility would be gone. In communism, I already mentioned this, you're predestined to live where the government says you'll exist. American capitalism allows for and helps upper mobility. I look at Carolyn and I, where we started from and where we've come to. We had that, and it comes back to opportunity. The individual has a choice, and you're encouraged to succeed, and the government bends over backwards with all these programs that we have for people to succeed, whether it's the food stamp programs, they'll educate you, send you to work, they'll train you in different trades. Marxism doesn't allow for upper mobility. One party praises protests for an organization against the government, against the rich, or maybe they organize for Hamas against the Israelis, and a group that attacks Israeli and celebrates the brutal attacks. The Dems and the Marxists is the party on the wrong side of these arguments. And the examples, we can talk about those all day. But there's one system that stands out above everybody else in the world, and that's the American form of government, a constitutional republic.
Well, just to give people some historical context about this, in the last 2 years, this is the fourth strike against Starbucks in the last 2 years. So I don't think they're going to change that much. But the New York City mayor-elect, Mr. Mandami, could be seen on he put this on the X post with him and Elizabeth Warren and former FTC Commissioner Lena Khan, which is a member of his transition team. This photo is shared on social media right there. Now, I got to tell you, I don't think I've broken this to you. You know, President Trump likes to nickname people. Of course, he calls Warren Pocahontas. I have my own nickname to her, and I'd put it up there with President Trump on this. I call her Liawapa because she will tell a lie.
I was wondering how you pronounced that.
Liawapa.
Liawapa.
That's my nickname. Liawapa. Liawapa. But she does drink coffee, Ted. I'm asking, does she? Because I've only seen her drink one thing, and I gotta play this. It's got to be part of Elizabeth Warren's greatest hits, and I don't know why she didn't catapult this video into becoming the president of the United States. Because
I don't understand that either.
Let's check it out.
Hold on a sec. I'm gonna get me a beer. Hey, Glover, my husband Bruce is now in here. You want a beer?
No, I'll pass on the beer for now.
You sure? Come over and say hello to folks.
Yes.
So, this is my sweetie.
Hello.
And I'm crazy.
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, enjoy your beer.
Who've we got here so far? Skylar, and 14 others. Hello.
Elizabeth Warren, you gotta love Liawapa Pocahontas right there. She's teaching you how to drink a beer. You know, and God, one thing, every time I look at that video, I'm like, her poor husband, man, I feel sorry for
you
that.
can tell that woman doesn't know how to drink beer out of a bottle. She should have had at least a glass and poured it in there.
But no wonder, Ted, our young people are starving for leadership when their choice is somebody like Liawapa or Mandami. Is it any wonder that they choose quite possibly this lady to be their leader? Check this video out.
Oh, man, you killed
are not slot machines for investors and big banks to extort working families out of every last dollar that they have. I believe that homes are not slot machines for investors and big banks to extort.
Well, Ted is the resident expert on Ocasio-Cortez. She is now the leader of the Democratic Party, I think.
There is no doubt about that. And Madani, he's going to probably surpass her. It's just really interesting, you know, for her to, and this is something I sent you the notes on. Last week we had the video up there of Bernie Sanders saying that Trump has a war on the working class. A war on the working class. AOC is saying the banks and the investment companies, they're extorting the American homeowners. They're extorting them. And I'm like, number one, how is Trump attacking the working man? What is the war on the working man? Explain it to me, Bernie. Come on the show. Tell us, what is that? You know, what is he? Is he holding them hostage? And then AOC, I don't know if she owns any property, but she's saying these banks and all these things are extorting people. I think the banks lend you money. They have a predetermined interest rate that you agree to, and then you make a choice. Am I going to pay this or not? And again, John, this is all class warfare. They're trying to divide people, saying how this side doesn't care about the working man. Give me a break. You know, Bernie Sanders has never had a real job that I'm aware of. He's always been in government. And Elizabeth Warren, she's been in academia. Now she's in government. She's never been out there sweating. I don't think either one of them have ever held a shovel to dig a footer. And AOC, by God, I'm surprised she's not at a barista protest somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to move on. We're going to hit a couple of topics in the remaining few minutes we have. And one of them is this statistics from USA Today and CBS News. So you know it's not, the right-winger network
It's
or
not
whatever.
tainted by
But if you're wondering who won, according to polling, the government shutdown, that this poll from CBS found that 55% of Americans believe President Donald Trump and the Republicans got more of what they wanted than the Democrats. Only 6% said Democrats came out on top, and 24% said neither party was victorious. The reality is probably the American people weren't victorious in any of this, but it's kind of interesting.
That is reality. They say this shutdown costs upwards into the $1 trillion plus. The Democrats got absolutely nothing. They did get 4,000 jobs that were laid off through OBM, Office of Budget and Management, in the government bureaucracy. They got those reinstated temporarily, but I'm sure you're going to see those go away before this administration's over. And then they didn't get the health care subsidies that they wanted. That should never have been in there because they came in with COVID. It was extra subsidies that already came on top of the other subsidies. And for 40-some days, they created the havoc that this country went through and put the government, people that are dependent on a government paycheck, the TSA people, all that, they put those people in harm's way and stress. And, of course, you're seeing Sean Duffy with the Transportation Board coming out. And any of the people that weathered the storm through our FAA, the air traffic controllers, they're getting a $10,000 bonus for sticking in there.
That's great. Well, today it was announced that they're lifting the flight restrictions as far as the air capacity, but it's still got to see how it goes. And it's going to take a little bit of time.
I'll report back because I fly up tomorrow morning out of Jacksonville. I leave early. And I was worried about that, too. Not so much about going up there, but about coming home.
Yeah, and keep this in mind when you're talking about air travel. Of course, the shutdown affected it for all the reasons it's been highly discussed. But there were very huge problems in our air system in general, lack of training, that Donald Trump and Secretary Duffy are trying to remedy right now. People don't realize there are so many issues that President Trump is trying to deal with. Now, he's been coming under fire. We talked a little bit of that at the beginning of the show, but what I've been thinking a lot lately is, would you rather have presidents, because we have a lot of presidents from both sides of the aisle that have just come along, get along,
sure,
maybe make a few impacts, but Donald Trump is trying to cure all of our ails in a year and in the whatever 4 years he has. And so would you rather have an active president or just a passive president that basically passes the buck after 8 years? I mean, that's what people
We
need to
need
answer.
somebody that's going to act. John, we're at over $38 trillion in debt, $3.2 billion a day, just in interest. Anybody that's had bad credit card debt, you understand what interest is and how devastating that is because you can't ever get out from under. You can't fix this a mamby-pamby way and make minor changes. You've got to have drastic changes. If not, it is an existential threat to not just to the government, to our way of life here in the United States. All you have to do is look at the examples of Greece, France, and Italy when they were under these tight constraints. Austerity measures come in. Austerity measures are drastic changes in the programs like Social Security, retirements, all these other programs that the government does, and they come in and they affect everybody and they're severe. And if we don't get people in Washington to address this problem, that's going to happen here. So Trump is the guy that needs, at least he has started, and we need to carry this on. And it's going to be ugly probably for 5 or 10 years, but it'll be devastating, and this country will fail if we don't do this.
Yeah, well, you mentioned credit card companies. I just point this out to people. Do you think it's a coincidence that most of the credit card companies in the last 40 years have put corporate offices in Delaware, where Joe Biden was the senator? You think that's a coincidence, or he's just that great a leader?
He's the big guy.
And interest rates are
I
gone.
wonder if they held out 10% for the big guy.
Probably.
I thought that was for God.
Yeah, 25% on us.
Of your
10%
income is
him.
for tithing.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we only got about 2 minutes left in the show, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, we talked a little bit about her on Friday, but she is doing some weird stuff right now because she is literally on the tip of every liberal's tongue on mainstream media. They're lionizing her when they literally said she was an idiot, 2 years ago or whatever. But now she's at the tip of the spear of fighting Donald Trump. We only got about 2 minutes. Close us out with what you think is happening there, Ted.
She has, like you said, she's been lionized on the liberal left. And I know Marjorie. I've talked to her. I've met with her. I don't know what her end game is here. I know she's frustrated with Trump. We can all be frustrated, but you got to look beyond him. You got to look at the changes going on in this nation. And one of her biggest complaints was the Epstein files. Does anybody really give a rat's rear end about the Epstein files when we've got our debt, we've got China, we lack energy security for a nation. China controls rare earth minerals and our pharmaceuticals. Do we really care about the Epstein files at this time? And as you see now, Trump says, just turn everything out, so we're going to do that. And along with that, turn out the UFO stuff and all the information on JFK and all these other conspiracy things, get them off the table. Let's focus on these things. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, I hope you find a landing place, and I hope it's not in government.
I hear you. What he said. Everybody, peace out.
You guys take care. Appreciate your support. Pass the word far and wide, and feel free to comment.
She's definitely trying to do some kind of